friend Dalia, but just to remind you, if there's anybody on Zoom who hasn't met her, she comes with an incredible resume of experience to her ministry, and she was a teacher for many years, and she also was psychotherapist, psychologist, and many years a Unity minister. So let's welcome Reverend Dalia.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me back. This is an amazing community, and I love coming. And thank you, Guy, for writing that song for me. Yeah. I was here about a month ago and shared a story that was transformative for me in my relationship with myself, and it involved my bird that taught me that I needed to learn how to say, "oh, wow," in response to myself. Well, today I want to tell you about another experience that I had. It was a lesson. It was one of those moments where my spiritual understanding just got flipped upside down, inside out, much like Kona did for me. But this was in my relationship to that which I call God, instead of just with myself. And I use the name God easily, freely. I embrace it. I know that there are some people that don't like that name for the divine. So please, if God bothers you, just change it to whatever name you like to use for God, whatever name resonates for you. So let me give some background of the story. I was relatively new to Unity, maybe 2-3 years. Not a total novice, but I embraced very much the idea that there was one presence and one power. And in my own spiritual evolution, I no longer thought of God as a white old man with the beard. And well, it was perfectly appropriate for when I was 5 and 6. I mean, that's how children relate, right? But unfortunately, sometimes there are not the teachers along the way to help us change that image into something more meaningful. It was changing for me. It was my sense of who and what God was getting less and less clear, which is a good sign. That's a sign of growth. And I had found this church. It was about 30 years ago. And it was teaching things that set my heart on fire, that made me renewed in my enthusiasm to know God, to know that which I call God. And from living a life of many years of no church whatsoever, except for a 12-step program, I was back in a groove of every Sunday I was showing up. I loved the community, I loved the people. The minister would always give a message that would be food for thought and help my understanding, and we had a great music department like you guys do. And this was back in the days when you could get a cassette tape of a service if you wanted, because it wasn't recorded on a thing like YouTube. The only thing, if you wanted some reproduction of the service, you could go to the bookstore and get a cassette tape. So I came to church one Sunday, and we had windows that were up high, so they didn't have to have blinds because no one could see in or out. But I spent my entire service daydreaming, looking at the clouds going by. And I loved what I was doing, but the service ended, and I'm there. I wasn't here. I have no idea what the message was. So I bought a cassette tape. And usually when I bought a cassette tape, when most of us bought a cassette tape, it would be to hear the message again. But the problem was they recorded the whole darn service, the announcements, so if you were regular, then those other pieces were repetitive, and the music was also recorded, which was good. But this particular time, I really wanted to hear the message, because as I was leaving, that's what people were saying, that it was an amazing message. So I put in the cassette tape, and I listened through the whole thing once, and the message was very good. And so for a week or two, I figured I'd listen to it again, maybe 2 or 3 times. So the next time I put in the cassette tape, it went straight to the beginning of the meditation music, which was a different melody, but the words that Guy used for that song, "May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, my God." And that would repeat many, many times over, and then the line, "And I long to be a blessing in your eyes." It was really beautiful. And it's kind of amazing the way, to have a cassette start at the beginning of a song. So I let it play beyond a little bit, and usually my drives were 10, 15 minutes, so I wouldn't get too far beyond. So the next time I'm driving and I'm thinking of, I want to hear this message again, I put in my cassette tape, and it goes to the very beginning of the meditation song. Now, what are the chances of that on a cassette tape? How many people had experiences with cassette tapes? What are the chances that it would go right to the beginning of a song? Plus, I was looking for the message. So, okay. So the next time, I flipped to the side that I thought had the message on, and I fast-forwarded to approximate where the beginning of the message would be, and begins the meditation song, "May the words." This happened 4 or 5 times with a cassette, and I never heard the message after that first time. Every time I put that cassette in, that song was playing. And back in Florida, one of the things I loved to do was take my dog and go for a walk. There was an island, an entire island that was a regional park, and it had amazing beaches and hardly any, people. Wintertime, it was pretty much empty, because in Florida, they thought that when it dropped into the upper 50s and lower 60s, it was freezing, so no one came to the beach. So I'd have this gorgeous beach to myself. The beaches, it was called Fort DeSoto Island, and the beaches on Fort DeSoto Island many times were listed in the top 10 beaches in the United States. So really beautiful. And so it was toward evening. I had a beautiful part wolf, part husky dog that I would walk with, and there were pathways alongside the beach, and maybe a little bit of seagrass and then the beach itself. But if you were on the pathway, you could walk for miles. So on the way to the beach, I put in the cassette tape, and guess what? Right to the beginning of that meditation song. And by this time, it was a piece of music, a song that was going round and round and round in my head, because that's what happens. And sometimes when that happens, you can't make it go away. And that's kind of where I was. I mean, this chant, this music was, it was there, and it was going round and round in my head. And the words come from Psalm 19. And Psalm 19 has 14 verses, and it's based in the 14th verse of the psalm. Now, depending what translation, the words are a little different, so I picked the translation that fit the song that I had heard the best. And so that's the 14th verse. No, I can't sing anything.
If you sang it, I would play exactly what you said.
But I can't. I'll look for that cassette tape, and if I find, you know, I may very well have it somewhere. I will actually look if I find it. So this is going round and round in my head. I'm walking with this dog of mine who's gorgeous on this absolutely beautiful beach, not a soul to be seen. You know, and the last songs, and it was actually in her version, I long to be a blessing in your eyes. And I could feel it here, you know, that longing, we feel it in our hearts. How many people know what I'm talking about? Where it brings tears to my eyes. I can feel it deep in my body when there is a longing that deep. And this was really precious for me in the moment. Looking back, thinking about it, I think with Unity, I started going deeper into my understanding of God as mind, as idea, as the power of our thoughts and our words, as the presence and the power, but mostly the emphasis of the teachings that I was getting is the infinite power that is God, and that infinite power is within me, and that I am one with that God, right? So this chant, this song was bringing up a longing. And again, looking back, I think one of the things I was longing for was a relationship with God. You know, because my new, deeper understanding of the truth of what God was took away that man in the sky, took away father in the sense of a personalized father. Not in a bad way, because it was me growing and evolving, but I realized as I'm walking and this longing and this last line is repeating, and in the middle of all this and feeling this longing, I looked over to my left because that's where the beach was, and it was facing the west, and the sun was going down. Now, I've spent much of my life watching sunsets. That's one of my things, especially by the water, by a beach. So I'm watching this sunset going down, and I gasped, because in all my life, I had never seen a sunset as beautiful. Now, mind you, I'd lived in the Virgin Islands, you know, but I had just never, ever seen a sunset as beautiful. And my dog at the same time is pulling me, which would force me to turn around. And I'm getting irritated because I want nothing to distract this moment of the most beautiful sunset on the face of the earth. But she was a strong dog, and she finally yanked me because for her, the critters on the other side of the trail. And I turned around, and the sunset was reflected in the clouds. And the reflection in the clouds was even more beautiful than the sunset that caught my eye. And I'm looking at these clouds. Mind you, I was repeating, I long to be a blessing in your eyes, in my mind, and I hear a voice that has guided me to make big decisions, like go to seminary, to move, to pursue teaching. There would be a voice in moments of deep insight, and it wasn't a still small voice. I recognize that it's the voice of God within me, but what I would experience is a big, loud, booming voice filling my world. And I got turned around, saw this reflection, And this voice says to me, and I long to be a blessing in your eyes. Okay, so I'm new to Unity, and this voices stuff is still pretty new to me. And I just started crying. I'm there, oh my gosh. My whole life, I have had my spiritual path backwards. I mean, I was raised Catholic. Like many religions, the more fundamentalist part of a religion, there's the laws are taught, the rules are taught, there's this idea that there is a God that judges whether we're good or bad, and that there is a God that wants us to act in a certain way. And from the time I was little, I would try so hard to be a good girl. I mean, it didn't always work, but I was big on, doing what God wanted me to do. And that's why those words, I long to be a blessing in your eyes, captivated me, because I had lived them in different ways throughout my life. And here this voice says to me, and I long to be a blessing in your eyes. So that means instead of trying to be so good and to practice what I'm learning so well, that in God's eyes I'm a blessing, I'm a good girl, right? Because it's the good kids that are blessings to their parents, right? Or in those moments. That my task is to see God as a blessing in my life. That's a completely different path, right? I mean, the truth is, and Unity teaches that in the eyes of God, we're perfect. Much like in the eyes of a parent when there's a toddler learning to walk and tripping and knocking things over, the parent doesn't say, boy, you're so far from perfect. They know, that parent knows that that toddler who's falling and making mistakes and tumbling is very perfect, because that's the nature of being human. We learn and we grow, and as we're in that process, we're perfect already. No matter how badly we stumble or fall, we're perfect already. So that path of trying to be good enough in God's eyes doesn't have much point, does it? But how do I live every day, every moment, knowing that God is a blessing in my eyes? How do I fulfill that longing that came with it if God is truth? God is truth is up here, not so much here for me, right? How do I experience a God longing to be a blessing in my eyes if God is mind? Mind doesn't long. Mind teaches and creates. So I worked, I struggled, but I knew that I would begin by seeing blessings everywhere I could see. And I'm going to jump now to the rest of the psalm, which I didn't look up till years later. And the psalm actually begins with appreciating God, with seeing the blessings of God in all of creation. That's where it begins. And it says, heaven is declaring God's glory. The sky is proclaiming his handiwork. That sunset I was watching, right? One day gushes the news to the next, and one night informs another what needs to be known. And what needs to be known are the blessings that are there every moment, every day, in every circumstance, right? The rest of the beginning of the psalm, verses 3 and 4, of course, there's no speech, no words. Their voices can't be heard, but their sound extends throughout the world. Their words reach the ends of the earth. So what I hear in that is there's no way expressing the blessings that God is. It fills the universe, it fills the earth. It's beyond words, beyond sound, beyond what could be defined, but it's there. It's ever present. So I long to be a blessing in your eyes. Imagine God speaking that to you. Imagine God reminding you every day, I long to be a blessing in your eyes. So a lot, and I've worked with it, and I kept remembering, and I love the shift in the direction of my spiritual path, because no longer did I get caught up in this, I'm not good enough, I have to become good enough, I have to try harder. I could rest in knowing and trusting the love of God, that no matter how badly I was stumbling, that I was accepted and blessed, and blessing God just by being. But for me, I needed to find a way with my new unity understanding, a way of holding that in my heart, because that was a teaching of love. And then I came back to our primary teaching. There is one presence, one power. Right? And we add words to that, but that's the core teaching. And for me, when I first immersed in unity, the emphasis seemed to be, or at least what I was picking up on, was the power of God. The creative power, the infinite possibilities that are God. The way that creative power moves through me, the visions that I hold, if I surrender them to that power of God, amazing things manifest in my life, right? I went to prosperity classes that taught me that and reinforced that. I would call silent unity that would hold my heart's desire in their prayers, and lo and behold, amazing things would happen. And this is my initial love affair with unity. It drew me in. But then I was also going deeper into my meditation practice. And with my meditation practice, I would find myself sitting in the silence, 10, 15, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes 10 days. And in the silence, I would experience the presence. And the presence wasn't doing fancy things like manifesting a new home for me, or a new car, or a new job. But the presence, through my meditation practice, through my unity teachings, became my refuge. That silence and the experience of the presence became the place I could go within myself that was safe. It was that place that I could go within myself that was love. It was the place that I could go within myself and experience that peace that passes all understanding. And when I practiced this, even when I was not in formal meditation, when I was not, quote, sitting in the silence, I began to carry that experience of the silence within me. So when I would turn on the news and feel horrified by whatnot was going on, whether it was a war, a fight, or politics, or, I could get carried away with that. I could practice my denials and affirmations, which is a great practice. But more powerfully, I could go within, in the silence, remember that experience of the presence. And when we remember an experience, we actually experience it again, right? Think of a time that was filled with a lot of joy for you. And if you became still and you thought of it, it's very possible that that same joy would come back up. So I could experience in the presence, that one presence, the blessings that are God. And I could carry the memory and the experience of those blessings within me wherever I went. My parents were refugees. They ran from Stalin's genocide. In the process of running, they were captured by Hitler and spent 10 years in a concentration camp. And I would sit in unity and I would hear that we create all of our experience. I'm there, no. I don't believe that they created that experience. I think a cultural, our race consciousness creates those kinds of experiences. But like Viktor Frankl, what they needed to do was find a way of being in that. And my father talked about it a little, and he would talk about becoming silent and remembering his relationship with God. And that was the blessing even in that horrendous experience. So there is a fire or a natural disaster and people lose homes or they're injured, or if you're an immigrant family, someone in your family or maybe your whole family gets put into one of these detention camps. Those things are not the blessing that is God, but it's that inner space where we experience the presence. When we experience the presence that is the source of our strength, the source of our wisdom, the source actually of our faith, that other possibilities are there to hold on to and to manifest. The presence that is the blessing of our joy. I mean, sometimes even in the midst of horrific things, there can be moments of joy. I remember I had been very, very close to my father, and he's deceased now 40 years. So I lost him when I was very young, adult, but young. And the grief that I felt graveside was huge, and the pain was horrific. In no way could I have ever seen his death as a blessing. But graveside, in the midst of all that, I experienced the most profound peace. And I was shocked that I could experience it. And that was an experience of the presence that is God, even in the midst of a very painful experience. Even in the midst of stuff, and we've got so much stuff happening these days. There is a blessing in the presence that is God. So I have been learning to give the one presence equal standing with the one power, and recognize it's like two sides of one coin. because the power that we learn about so well in unity comes from the presence that is God. So I forgot to advance that so you could see it. Let's see. I think there was one more something. No, that's it. That's it. Yes. Okay. So, to tie it all up, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, Meg and Guy and Dalia. And this is God speaking to each one of us, inviting us to hear the meditations that are God's, to see the gifts that are God's, to say wow, and to build that in to our relationship to God. And so it is. So I invite you now to take this longing of God's, that you see the blessing, that you experience the blessing, that you know the blessing that God is. And you see this blessing each and every day. That you hear and experience this blessing in the midst of laughter, in the midst of tears, in the midst of sorrow, in the midst of fun. So allow yourself to go deep within, letting every breath take you a little deeper. Deep into that sacred space. That sacred space where you know and you experience the presence that is God. And the presence that is God is the love of God that enfolds you in this very moment. The presence that is God is the light that fills your entire being. That surrounds you wherever you go. The presence that is God is the strength that you rely on. The strength that keeps you standing. The strength that leads you forward. The strength and the joy and the peace. The presence that is God is the joy that fills your heart. The ever new joy. The presence that is God is the gratitude that you feel, the peace, the wisdom. And so holding a profound awareness of the blessings that are God, the blessings that fill your life, that fill your experience of each and every day. Bringing these blessings with you, allow yourself to gently and easily bring your attention back to this room. Take a nice slow breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And look around, look at this sacred space, this beautiful community, and see the blessing that is God expressing in this very moment.